Welcome to Magical Storybook English Nanny Bedtime Stories, a collection of ancient fairy tales and folklore from around the world. Adapted and read by Rhianna Meehan. Today's story is from Scandinavia. The Lay of Thrym. In Norse mythology, Thor is the god of thunder, and he lives in Asgard, the land of the gods. They say that Thor's hammer was his most prized possession, and so when he woke up one morning to find that it had been stolen, he was furious. He shouted so loud that his companion Loki rushed in to see what had happened. "If the giants hear that I no longer have my powerful hammer," cried Thor, "they will no doubt break the walls of Asgard and try to destroy all of the gods." Loki tried to calm Thor down and said, "Don't worry, we will uncover the thief and bring back the hammer." "How will we do that?" asked Thor. "I have a plan," said Loki. And then he set off to visit his friend, Freya, to ask whether he may borrow her coat of feathers. Freya agreed, and so, in the form of a bird, Loki took to the air and flew across the barren lands of Jotunheim until at last he reached the world of the giants. There he found Thrym, the lord of the frost giants, sitting alone on the hillside, combing his horse's manes. Thrym greeted Loki and made pleasant conversation, asking how the gods were. "Things are bad with the gods," replied Loki. And then he asked Thrym whether he had stolen Thor's hammer. Thrym began to laugh. "I have hidden Thor's hammer 8 miles deep in the earth, and you may tell him that I will not return it unless he brings Freya here to be my wife." The crunching sound of Thrym's laughter followed Loki as he flew back into the sky. He left the world of the giants behind him and flew back to Asgard. Thor was waiting for him to return, and so Loki gave him Thrym's message. "Do you think that Freya would marry Thrym?" asked Thor. "I need my hammer back." So they set off to ask her. "Sacrifice myself to the frost giant? I would never marry a giant just to please a god," she cried on hearing their request. "Besides, Jotunheim is such a dreary place. I would long for the green fields and flowery meadows of Asgard too much." Realizing that Freya would never agree, Thor and Loki returned home, disappointed. They consulted with the other gods, asking them for help to come up with another plan. "How can I get my hammer back?" Thor asked. Heimdall, the fairest of the gods, could see into the future. "Let us dress Thor in women's bridal linen. If he wears Freya's necklace and bridal jewels upon his chest and a dainty hood on his head, we can fool Thrym." Thor was aghast. "You will all laugh at me if I put on bridal linen." But when Heimdall reminded him that the frost giants would attack Asgard if he didn't get his hammer back, Thor reluctantly agreed. So Thor put on Freya's bridal linen, tied her necklace around his neck, and they pinned bridal jewels upon his chest. Loki dressed himself as a maid, and the two of them galloped to Jotunheim in a goat-drawn chariot, with mountains trembling and flames scorching the earth as they went. And eventually, they arrived at the frost giant's palace. Thrym welcomed his guests at the door, overjoyed at the thought that he was about to marry Freya. He had more riches than anyone, but he considered the goddess of beauty as the one prize he had yet to get. He led the visitors to the banqueting hall, where they were welcomed with a great ceremony. Straw had been spread on the benches, a feast laid on the table, and giant servants were filling the guests' goblets with wine. Believing that he was Freya, Thrym led Thor in all his bridal clothes to the feasting table and pointed out all the fine food that had been drawn from the sea and the air in her honour. All of the guests watched in amazement as the bride ate more than any of the frost giants. Firstly, a whole ox and 8 huge salmon, and following that, all the cakes and sweets that had been provided for the women of the court. And to round things off, they watched her down it all with 2 barrels of mead. "Who has ever seen a bride eat and drink so heartily?" said Thrym to Loki. Loki thought quickly. "The bride is so excited and so in love that she has barely eaten anything for 8 days." Hearing these words, Thrym went to lift the bride's veil and kiss her. But when she glared at him, he jumped back. "Why are Freya's eyes so angry?" he said to the maidservant. "They are like burning coals." Loki answered once more. "Freya was so eager to come to Jotunheim and be married that she has not slept for 8 nights. Then one of Thrym's sisters came in and said to the bride-to-be, "It is customary that if you want my love and friendship, then you must give me the gold rings from your fingers." But the bride ignored her, and when Thrym questioned this, Loki simply explained that love had made the bride absent-minded. By now Thrym had drunk much mead and shouted to his servants, "Bring forward the hammer, so that I may bless the bride." As soon as Thor's hammer was brought in, Thrym laid it in his bride's lap. Thor's heart danced when he saw that he'd been handed the hammer. He grabbed the handle, pulled off his veil, and he slayed Thrym. Seeing that Thor showed no mercy, the other frost giants ran from the palace and were never seen again. Having conquered his enemy, and with his hammer safely back in his possession, Thor and Loki rode back to Asgard. And that is the legend of how Thor, the god of thunder, won back his hammer.